Arlindo Chisali. Thus far, no reaction has been received from the Mozambican government. The third part of my report is dedicated to my activities as a rapporteur of the special mechanism, starting from paragraph 24 of my report, where we have the achievements in accordance with the work plan approved by the Commission. Here we had intense exchanges with partners of the mechanisms. We celebrated the 10 years of the Luanda guidelines, although late. We also launched activities to state parties who continue to promote the Luanda guidelines in favor of the paradigm shift in national policies on prisons and places of detention. Is still in my capacity as special rapporteur. I was invited to take part of the joint session of standing committees of SADC Parliamentary Forum, which is currently discussing the approval of a model law in the region on the supervision of prisons by members of parliament. This is a key element as the mechanism is currently conducting a study on conditions of detention in Africa. So to talk of the supervision by other organs such as a parliament is a commendable achievement or initiative. So the SADC Parliamentary Forum is working on this and wanted to get inputs from the Commission on the model law. As a member of other mechanisms, more precisely the Committee on the Prevention of Torture, the Working Group on Communications, and the Working Group on the Death Penalty, we carried several activities. And the last activity was the one carried out in Abidjan on the technical consultations on the Working Group on Death Penalty. As a rapporteur for the 5 Portuguese-speaking countries in Africa, I worked with the respective focal points nominated by the states in the sense of looking for solutions regarding the presentation of reports under the Article 62 of the African Charter. As it was said yesterday by Commissioner Hotham, there are a group of countries that don't usually submit reports to the Commission, and some with a long overdue. So there are some countries that I'm supervising that have never presented reports to the Commission. So with the focal points, we have been looking for solutions to support states in complying with their obligation. And as a result of this engagement, the Center for Human Rights of the University of Pretoria has volunteered to support in terms of capacity building to support the Commission in countries where members of the civil society and government officials can be trained in supporting their internal commissions. And we can see results, positive results. In Cabo Verde, an MOU was signed and the report is currently being drafted. At any moment, we'll have Cabo Verde presenting its country state report on human rights. Also, as a fruit of this advocacy, it was noticeable the presence of His Excellency, the Ambassador of Cabo Verde in Addis Ababa, to participate in our current ordinary session. In Guinea-Bissau, we also have good news on the update of the NHRI, and we will likely increase the number of Portuguese-speaking NHRIs in our commission. It was also signed an MOU between the Ministry of Justice of Guinea-Bissau and the Pretoria Human Rights Center in order to train agents, and we hope to get results in the short term. However, there's a concern in Guinea-Bissau regarding the lack of understanding between political actors on the elections calendar. Another concern for this Portuguese-speaking country is the alleged persecution of the chair of the National League for Human Rights, Mr. Boubacar Touré. We have also been talking about the restriction of the civic space, and I continue to follow the developments on the matter of Mr. Boubacar Touré. We have also Equatorial Guinea, which is a country that has not submitted its report under Article 62 of the African Charter, and we continue to conduct the advocacy exercise in order to change this situation. The concern with Equatorial Guinea is the restriction of the freedom of religion, more specifically the closure of all the Jehovah Witnesses temples since last April. We are following this situation. We may have some updates in the next report. For Mozambique, as a result of the advocacy in May last year, we had the country presenting its state report, and in the current ongoing session, we had the presence of His Excellency Minister of Justice presenting an update on the post-elections developments in Mozambique. It is a positive development, and we will continue to engage with Mozambique on that. Mozambique also faced several challenges pertaining to the elections process, but also endured the cyclone Chidu, which caused devastation and affected around 329,000 people and several dead and injured. The concern remains due to the instability in the province of Cabo Delgado, and this was referenced by the minister during his speech. Last but not least, São Tomé and Príncipe, one of the countries that has not submitted reports nor has participated in the sessions of the Commission. We are currently engaging in advocacy, which will hopefully culminate with an MOU signed and capacity building on state reporting. We await for their authorization to go in country, because since the promotion visit we undertook, we didn't have the necessary feedback. Honorable Chair, distinguished participants, as a result of the mandate received to develop a study on prisons and conditions of detention in Africa, we had positive developments, although it hasn't been possible to conclude the work due to various constraints as stated in the report. In this session, we'll take the opportunity to request member states to collaborate further with the Commission and, if possible, having a study carried out by an African entity for the African continent. We invite our partners as well to continue with their efforts in order to move forward with this exercise. I have the fifth part of my report reserved for recommendations, where I highlight items that were raised in the previous report. Specifically, We request member states to open their countries to visits, promotion visits to their countries. Finally, I have a note of gratitude to all that directly and indirectly collaborate with my mechanisms. Honorable chairs, this is a summary of my report, which I believe will be available in the Commission's website, and I'm available to any clarifications. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Manuela, and thank you for the presentation of this report, which is clear, precise, and concise. On behalf of all the commissioners, I would like to congratulate you for the activities which you conducted as Special Rapporteur on prisons, detention conditions, and the action of the police in Africa. Wish you total success in your mandate. Now we'll move on to the interactive part. We'll call on states, national human rights institutions, and civil society organizations who are registered on the list to take the floor. Let me begin. Wait. I'm calling on the Ambassador Malainin Mohammed, who is the Deputy Permanent Representative of the African Union. Your Excellency, the Ambassador, you have the floor.
Of the Commission, Honorable Commissioners, Excellencies, Ambassadors, distinguished delegates, all protocols observed. Honorable Chairperson, the Sahrawi Republic appreciates the report of the Special Rapporteur on prisons, conditions of detention, and policy in Africa, acknowledging its focus on the suffering of a significant portion of our continent's population, including thousands of human rights defenders, civil society activists, journalists, and politicians. Today, however, I must specifically address the ongoing systematic abuse of Sahrawi political prisoners within Moroccan detention centers. These are not isolated incidents, but a deliberate and consistent policy of repression, dehumanization, and control executed with impunity by Moroccan prison authorities, flagrantly violating the United Nations Nelson Mandela rules and Morocco's own prison laws, and totally violating, in the case of occupied Western Sahara, the provisions of the Fourth Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in times of war. Let's never forget here that Western Sahara is considered by the United Nations as a colony under Moroccan illegal settlement occupation, still to decolonize. Among the numerous victims are Mohammed Lamin Haddi, Sidi Abdullah Abbaha, Mohammed Bourial, and Abdel Jalil Laousi, prisoners of conscience targeted for their political beliefs and advocacy for Sahrawi self-determination. Torture against Sahrawi detainees, including these three political prisoners, is a confirmed reality acknowledged by the United Nations Committee Against Torture. These practices include beatings, suffocation, electric shocks, sexual assaults, and psychological torture, such as death threats and denial of human contact. Prisoners also report being denied medical attention for worsening wounds. These men, along with other prisoners of Gdemizik group and other Sahrawi political prisoners, endure unimaginable suffering. Mohammed Lamin Haddi and Sidi Abdullah Baha, for example, have been in prolonged solitary confinement since 2018 in the infamous Tiflit II prison. Their families face regular denial of visits, and lawyers are barred from access to them, violating their fundamental rights to defense. The very conditions of their cells constitute a slow form of torture. Detainees are confined in mold-infested, humid, poorly ventilated, and perpetually dim spaces lacking natural light and adequate bedding. Infestation of insects and vermin are rampant in these unsanitary environments. Water is limited and often contaminated, while food is nutritionally inadequate and deliberately rationed to keep them in a constant state of exhaustion. These are not systemic failures, but the system itself. The treatment of Sahrawi political prisoners echoes the brutal torture once inflicted on African liberation fighters by former colonial authorities. To this day, Moroccan prisons continue to perpetuate that same system of colonial violence, shielded, unfortunately, by the complicity of several allies who conceal these abuses and work to whitewash Morocco's human rights record, allowing it to continue enjoying impunity. Finally, these are crimes against dignity and law, witnessed openly and documented by a rights group and by the United Nations, and deserve attention from all African human rights organizations and activists. I thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, I've already told you that this organ has jurisdiction over state parties which have ratified the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. These are some of the limits of international law in regard to jurisdiction. So if you go to the International Court of Justice today, there are states which will complain against other states, but their cases would be dismissed. The recent case was the conflict between two African countries, where one of the countries, and I'm not going to quote them not to worsen the situation, it said that the other country had not recognized the jurisdiction of the ICJ. There are many such things, but international organizations do not say that they deny cases of violations, not at all, but they say that there's legal impossibility for them to give answers, because here we give legal responses, and that is why we are carrying out an advocacy which should not be ignored, so that the state which you have stated, Morocco, should ratify the African Charter. And in the two meetings which I held with you, I gave indications and advised you very sincerely to mobilize Addis Ababa, so that the Troika, which we are waiting for quite some time, they have been helping us to lighten the suffering of the Sahrawi people, which people we share solidarity with. I'm talking about the resolution 693, which you are very much aware of. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your active participation. I see a flag raised. Is it South Africa? Commissioner Manuela is going to respond to that question. Is it South Africa? Who is seeking the floor? Is it South Africa?
Very much excused. My delegation appreciates the comprehensive report presented by the Special Rapporteur on prisons, conditions of detentions, and police actions in Africa. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the adoption of the UN Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners. The rules were adopted by the UNGA in 2015 and renamed the Nelson Mandela Rules to honor the late statesman Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison during his struggle for freedom. To mark this important anniversary, and as part of government commitment to promote the implementation of the Nelson Mandela Rules, South Africa will coordinate events and initiatives to mobilize global action on prison and penal reform. We invite you all to participate in the series of these events that will be convened this year to mark the 10-year anniversary of the Nelson Mandela Rules. I thank you, Chair.
Merci. Je vais revenir sur les États après. Je vois que la République sahraoui demande...
I notice that Sahrawi Republic is still seeking the floor. I'll give you the floor, Your Excellency, the Ambassador. at the end of the list, I'll come back to the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. It should have been Madam Albab.
The floor.
Thank you. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Special Rapporteur on Prisons, Conditions of Detention and Policing in Africa, Honorable Commissioners, distinguished state delegates, representatives of national human rights institutions and non-governmental organizations, all protocols duly observed. The Ethiopian Human Rights Commission presents its compliments to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights and is pleased to address the Special Rapporteur on Prisons, Conditions of Detention and Policing in Africa regarding the situation of prisons, conditions of detention and policing in
Yes,
Ethiopia.
Ethiopian human rights interpreters are saying if you can speak very slow. Yeah.
Okay. Honorable Chairperson, AHRC's monitoring has identified some positive developments over the last 6 months. With the exception of areas experiencing armed conflict and general insecurity, arrests are generally conducted following the establishment of reasonable suspicion, and after securing a court warrant, detainees are brought before courts within 48 hours, suspects are granted bail, the use of force has decreased, and detainees are treated more humanely in police custody. Honorable Chairperson, despite these positive developments, the following are concerning developments that require urgent attention. While the state of emergency in the Amhara region was lifted, the region remains under de facto state of emergency with more than 6,000 individuals detained in informal detention facilities. Some of those detained were reportedly released after months of detention. In the Oromia region, individuals arbitrarily detained due to quote-unquote security concerns remain in detention despite many of the detainees having been granted bail by courts. Similar incidents of arbitrary and unlawful detention, denial of bail, and refusal to execute court orders have been documented in other regions. AHRC further documented cases where parliamentarians, judges, and other individuals with immunity were arrested by the security forces without lifting their immunity, including in the Benishangul Gumuz regional state, as well as others. Arrest for failure to pay debts from microfinance institutions is also a growing concern. Police in the capital continue to detain and forcibly remove individuals living on the streets to shelters that lack basic facilities. Police have also detained documented and undocumented refugees and asylum seekers in various detention centers that lack basic facilities, and up to 400 undocumented asylum seekers have been deported to Eritrea. Contrary to the provisions of the media proclamation, the personnel of a private media organization were subjected to pre-trial detention, and documentaries compromising their right to be presumed innocent were aired on state media before the completion of their judicial due process. The prison system in Ethiopia continues to be characterized by overcrowding and lack of basic services. Moreover, young offenders continue to be detained with adult offenders in most prisons across the country. Honorable Chairperson, in light of these findings, EHRC presents the following recommendations to the government of Ethiopia. 1. Strictly adhere to due process and end the practice of arbitrary, unlawful, and prolonged pretrial detention, enforce disappearances, detention in informal places, and unlawful search and seizure, as well as take the necessary disciplinary and accountability measures. 2. Establish an independent civilian oversight body to ensure police accountability directly to the public. To the African Commission, we recommend that the body engages the government and armed groups to peacefully resolve armed conflicts in the Amhara and Oromia regions, to engage with the government to strengthen the protection of human rights during armed conflict, and to advocate for the African Commission and to support the government in establishing an independent civilian oversight body to ensure police accountability and expedite the adoption of non-custodial measures to address prison overcrowding. I thank you.
Thank you, Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. We do have 2 NGOs on the list, International Detention Coalition, International Detention Coalition, they are not here, Amnesty International, Arnold Chico Wanchiko, Amnesty International. Amnesty International's representative is not here. Commissioner Manuela, before you react, wants to take the floor. Your Excellency, Ambassador Malainin Mohammed, you have the floor. Thereafter, Commissioner Manela would share with us her concluding remarks.
With the Sahrawi victims and for the attention to the violation. Though, as you clearly stated, the problem lays in the fact that Morocco is not a signatory of the Charter, and therefore most of the mechanisms, I won't say all of them, of the African Commission cannot work on violations because Morocco is not a member state. But let's not forget that the main mandate of the Commission is above all to promote human rights and to educate governments, but also activists, on the issues in Africa. Keeping quiet from our side or from any other NGO and simply ignoring the situation, regardless of any decisions or understanding of a decision, is simply not the option. And it is not the mandate also of the Commission to implement such political decisions. Human and people's right promotion and protection are and should be above any other consideration. Therefore, I thank you for your reaction of solidarity and totally support your efforts to convince Morocco to join the Charter of African Human and People's Rights so as it can answer on its violations and occupation of our country. Thank you.
Monsieur l'ambassadeur.
Thank you, Honorable Ambassador. With all due respect, I did say previously that 45.4 of the Charter demands the Commission to implement decisions of the organs. It is written black and white in the African Charter. I also said that 2 years ago, the PRC made a ruling. It was then headed by Senegal, had given guidance on this matter and Maro, and these guidelines were given to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. I did share with you the background to that case. The CRP in its entirety referred the organ to defer issues with line to this decision of 697. What I don't understand is that the Troika is being left as it were, but then it is the Commission which is requested to do everything. We are in solidarity with all people who suffer in Africa, including the Sahrawi case. I would like to reassure you, and I believe that we have talked about this at length. However, thank you so much for your intervention. Let me now give the floor back to Honorable Commissioner Maria Teresa Manuela for her concluding remarks. Honorable Maria Teresa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And I would like to thank all of those who have spoken on my report. I'd like to thank the ambassador of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, and the chairperson has given the necessary clarifications. We are still awaiting for authorization to go to Morocco in the terms of the PRC resolution. Without jurisdiction, we can't do anything, which does not mean that we do not have solidarity towards our brothers and sisters of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. And we all continue on our advocacy for Morocco to ratify so that we can fulfill our mandate. To the representatives from South Africa, I thank you for thank you for your intervention. And if we have an opportunity, we eagerly await for an invitation to go to the country. With regard to the Ethiopian National Human Rights Commission, we thank you for the information provided, but usually I request the NHRI, which is one of the bodies in charge of visiting prisons, to share with us this information in writing so that we can review it and give due process. And I would like to ask the Ethiopian NHRI to help us to be granted a visit by the mechanisms to visit the prisons in Ethiopia, because we know that after all that has happened, there must be issues, and we need to verify on the ground what's happening. But I do request that the information you shared be transmitted to the Secretariat so that we can review it and try to secure a mission of the mechanism or the Commission to address these issues. Having now responded to all intervention, I would like to thank you, Honorable Chair, for the time allocated to me, and I give you back the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an opportunity for me to, with respect to the decision taken to naturalize, to give citizenship to the descendants from the African diaspora, and that this is a decision which should be commended, and with respect to Guinea-Bissau. Thank you, Guinea-Bissau, for the decision to accord citizenship to those individuals. We now come to an end to the review of the activity report by Commissioner Manuela. A round of applause, please, for this remarkable job that she has done. I will now give the floor to my colleague, Honorable Aseme, for item number 3, Human Rights Situation in Africa. Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to greet all the delegates here present. We would now continue with the discussions on the human rights situation in Africa. And on my list, we have Minority Rights Groups International. Is the representative of this organization here present? They are not here. Now, online now, virtual participation, do we have any? Let me, all the same, call upon Well-Being Africa. African Child Policy Forum. World Organization Against Torture. Sustainable Development Institute. International Detention Coalition. Well, it would appear that nobody is online. So let me now move on to the list of those who are here present. Forum for Development and Human Rights Dialogue, Said Darwish. It's not here. Together, Ensemble Against the Death Penalty. Then, Sustainable Development Institute. Lawyers for Human Rights, Ethiopia. I can see any representative. IPAS Africa Alliance, David Omonde. Ivorian Coalition for Human Rights Defenders. And finally, World Alliance for Citizen Participation, Paul Mulindwa. So, Chair, that was all on the list. I will now hand over the floor back to you. Thank you, the Acting Vice Chairperson, Honorable Commissioner Atem Hesayem. In the absence of delegations on this list, on item number 3 of the agenda, and if those present here, nobody wants to take the floor, whether you're talking about the states, NHRI, who are here but who are not on the list, well, I will have no choice but to call it a day whilst we wait tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a quite buttress agenda with the response of the states, Zimbabwe and Ethiopia. Then that will be the ceremony for the closure of this public session. Is there any participant in the hall and who was not on the list and who would like to take the floor? Well, no, I can see none. So it is in collegial decision that we decide to suspend. Oh, sorry, the NHRI of Mozambique.
NHRI of Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe. Yes, very quickly, your statement.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry I might be out of order, but it's an issue that was raised by Commissioner Manuela, and her invitation that NHRIs can also ask for welcome her mechanism for promotional visits. But just to say that we are interested in the, thank you for advising about the SADC parliamentary forums process to develop a model law on prisons and prison visits, that it will be looking forward to engaging with her as the SADC Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions in seeking to also promote that agenda and support the process for the improvement of prison conditions in our respective countries. Thank you.
Merci, commissaire Manuela. Vous avez une main qui vous est...
Then she